Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. Story edited by Andrew Lang. Part 1. Once upon a time there lived a poor tailor who had a son called Aladdin, a careless, idle boy who would do nothing but play ball all day long in the streets with little idle boys like himself. One day, when he was playing in the streets, as usual, a stranger asked him his age and if he was not the son of Mustapha, the tailor.
"I am, sir,"
replied Aladdin.
"but he died a long while ago."
He then turned to Aladdin and asked him his trade, at which the boy hung his head. On learning that Aladdin was idle and would learn no trade, he offered to take a shop for him and stock it with merchandise. The next day he bought Aladdin a fine suit of clothes and took him all over the city, showing him the sights, and brought him home at nightfall to his mother, who was overjoyed to see her son so fine. The next day the magician led Aladdin into some beautiful gardens a long way outside the city gates. They sat down by a fountain, and the magician pulled a cake from his girdle, which he divided between them. They then journeyed onward till they almost reached the mountains. Aladdin was so tired that he begged to go back, but the magician kindled a fire and drew Aladdin's attention with stories. The magician threw a powder into the fire, at the same time saying some magical words. The earth trembled a little and opened in front of them, disclosing a square flat stone with a brass ring in the middle to raise it by. Aladdin tried to run away in fear, but the magician grabbed a hold of him and said,
"Beneath this stone lies a treasure which is to be yours, and no one else may touch it, so you must do exactly as I tell you."
At the word treasure, Aladdin forgot his fears and pulled at the stone. The stone came up quite easily, and some steps appeared.
"Go down,"
said the magician.
"At the foot of these steps you will find an open door leading into 3 large halls. Go through them without touching anything, or you will die instantly. These halls lead into a garden of fine fruits. Walk on until you come to a terrace which stands a lighted lamp. Pour out the oil it contains and bring it to me."
He drew a ring from his finger and gave it to Aladdin, wishing him well. Aladdin found everything as the magician had said, gathered some fruit off the trees, and, having got the lamp, arrived at the mouth of the cave. The magician cried out in a great hurry,
"Make haste! Give me the lamp!"
This Aladdin refused to do until he was out of the cave. The magician flew into a terrible rage, and throwing some more powder on the fire, he said something, and the stone rolled back into its place. The magician left Persia forever, which plainly showed that he was no uncle of Aladdin's, but a cunning magician who had read in his magic books of a wonderful lamp, which would make him the most powerful man in the world. Though he alone knew where to find it, he could only receive it from the hand of another. He had picked out the foolish Aladdin for this purpose, intending to get the lamp and kill him afterward. For 2 days Aladdin remained in the dark, crying out. At last he clasped his hands in prayer, and in so doing rubbed the ring which the magician had forgotten to take from him. Immediately an enormous and frightful genie rose out of the earth, saying,
"What wouldst thou with me? I am the slave of the ring and will obey thee in all things."
Aladdin fearlessly replied, "Deliver me from this place." Whereupon the earth opened, and he found himself outside. As soon as his eyes could bear the light, he went home, but fainted on the threshold. When he came to himself, he told his mother what had passed, and showed her the lamp and the fruits he had gathered in the garden, which were, in reality, precious stones. He then asked for some food.
"Oh, alas, child,"
she said.
"I've nothing in the house, but I've small little cotton, and I'll go to sell it."
Aladdin bade her to keep her cotton, for he would sell the lamp instead. As it was very dirty, she began to rub it, that it might fetch a higher price. Instantly a genie appeared and asked what she would have. She fainted away, but Aladdin, snatching the lamp, said boldly, "Fetch me something to eat." The genie returned with a silver bowl, 12 silver plates containing rich meats, 2 silver cups, and 2 bottles of wine. Aladdin's mother, when she came to herself, said, "Where's this from?" "Ask not, but eat," replied Aladdin. So they sat at breakfast till it was dinner time, and Aladdin told his mother about the lamp. She begged him to sell it and have nothing to do with its evils. "No," said Aladdin, "we will use it, and the ring likewise, which I shall always wear on my finger." When they had eaten all the genie had brought them, Aladdin sold one of the silver plates, and so on until none were left. He then asked the genie for more plates, and thus they lived for many years. One day Aladdin heard an order from the Sultan, proclaiming that everyone was to stay at home and close their shutters while the princess, his daughter, went out into the village. Aladdin hid himself behind the door and peeped through. The princess lifted her veil as she went in and looked so beautiful that Aladdin fell in love with her at first sight. He went home so changed that his mother was frightened. He told her he loved the princess so deeply that he could not live without her, and meant to ask her in marriage of her father. His mother, on hearing this, burst out laughing, but Aladdin at last prevailed upon her to go upon the Sultan and carry his request. She fetched a napkin and laid in it the magic fruits from the enchanted garden, which sparkled and shone like the most beautiful jewels. She took these with her to please the Sultan, and set out trusting in the lamp. At a sign from the vizier, she went up to the foot of the throne and remained kneeling till the Sultan said to her,
"Rise, good woman, and tell me, what do you want?"
She hesitated, so the Sultan sent away all but the vizier and bade her speak, promising to forgive her beforehand for anything she might say. She then told him of her son's violent love for the princess.
"I prayed him to forget her," she said, "but he wouldn't, and made me promise to ask your majesty for the hand of the princess. Now I pray you to forgive not me alone, but my son Aladdin."
The Sultan asked her kindly what she had in the napkin, whereupon she unfolded the jewels and presented them. He was thunderstruck, and turning to the vizier said,
"What sayest thou? Ought I not to bestow the princess on one who values her at such a price?"
The vizier, who wanted her for his own son, begged the Sultan to withhold her for 3 months, in the course of which he hoped his son would contrive to make him a richer present. The Sultan granted this, and told Aladdin's mother that, though he consented to the marriage, she must not appear before him again for 3 months. When the 3 months were over, Aladdin sent his mother to remind the Sultan of his promise. She stood in the same place as before, and the Sultan, who had forgotten Aladdin, at once remembered him and sent for her. On seeing her poverty, the Sultan felt less inclined than ever to keep his word, and asked his vizier advice, who counselled him to set so high a value on the princess that no man living could come up to it. The Sultan then turned to Aladdin's mother, saying,
"Good woman, a sultan must remember his promises, and I will remember mine. But your son must first send me 40 basins of gold, brimful of jewels, carried by 40 slaves. Tell him that I await his answer."
The mother of Aladdin bowed low and went home thinking all was lost. She gave Aladdin the message, adding,
"You may wait long enough for your answer."
"Not so long as you think, mother," replied Aladdin. "I would do a great deal more than that for that princess." He summoned the genie, and in a few moments the 40 slaves arrived and filled up the small house and garden. They entered the palace and, after kneeling before the Sultan, stood in a half circle around the throne with their arms crossed, while Aladdin's mother presented them to the Sultan. He hesitated no longer and said,
Good woman, return and tell your son that I wait for him with open arms.
She lost no time in telling Aladdin, bidding him make haste. Aladdin mounted his horse and passed through the streets, the slaves strewing gold as they went. Those who had played with him in his childhood knew him not. He had grown so handsome. When the Sultan saw him, he came down from his throne, embraced him, and led him into a hall where a feast was spread, intending to marry him to the princess that very day. But Aladdin refused, saying,
I must build a palace for her,
and took his leave. Once home, he said to the genie,
Build me a palace of the finest marble, set with jasper, agate, and other precious stones.
The palace was finished the next day, and the genie carried him there and showed him all his orders faithfully carried out, even to the laying of a carpet from Aladdin's palace to the Sultan's. At night, the princess said goodbye to her father and set out on the carpet for Aladdin's palace with his mother at her side and followed by 100 slaves. She was charmed at the sight of Aladdin, who ran to receive her.
Princess,
he said,
blame your beauty for my boldness if I have displeased you.
She told him that, having seen him, she willingly obeyed her father in this matter. After the wedding had taken place, Aladdin led her into the hall where a feast was spread, and she supped with him, after which they danced till midnight. The next day, Aladdin invited the Sultan to see the palace. On entering the hall with the rubies and diamonds and emeralds, he cried,
It's a world's wonder. My daughter has made the best match.
Aladdin had won the hearts of the people by his gentle bearing. He was made captain of the Sultan's armies and won several battles for him, but remained modest and courteous as before, and lived thus in peace and content for several years. Word of the brave and handsome Prince of Persia spread to the far reaches of Africa, where the evil magician came to learn that it was Aladdin, the same foolish boy he had thought would perish in the Cave of Treasures. He immediately determined to get back to Persia and claim what should have been his. End of part 1.